Welcome, everybody. Good evening. It's really nice to have you here. So I believe we can start. And first of all, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Lilia. I am a part of Green Country Methodological Department, and also I'm a trainer at Green Country and here in TalkEn.Cloud Academy. And first of all, I'm really happy to have all of you at the second webinar on UAE preparation. So today we're going to discuss lots of interesting things. And first thing first, let's speak about the general agenda. So we're going to start with a brief introduction of TalkEn.Cloud, so you just know what it is and what platform presents this webinar. And after that, we're gonna review different topics. So today's webinar is dedicated more to different challenges and effective strategies and solutions on how to address those challenges. And also there will be some really interesting practical tips, resources, and some bonuses. So let me start with a brief switch to Ukrainian, where I'm gonna tell you about TalkEn.Cloud. Отже, ми сьогодні працюємо на платформі TalkEn.Cloud, і це платформа для викладачів, для репетиторів, на якій можна знайти дуже багато всього корисного. Від бібліотеки підручників, де зібрані матеріали різних рівнів, різних тем, які можна використовувати на уроках, і вони повністю для цього вже адаптовані і готові. Також тут ми можемо знайти систему менеджменту, власне, або окремих учнів, або цілого класу, тобто тут можна контролювати успішність учнів, перевіряти їхні роботи, надсилати їм завдання і так далі і тому подібне. І це Академія розвитку мовних шкіл, тобто TalkEn.Cloud спрямований на те, щоб допомагати іншим школам розвиватися, рости і загалом контролювати навчальний процес. Отже, що таке LMS? Ми маємо бібліотеку інтерактивних підручників. Як ви бачите, це 50 цифрових підручників для рівнів від Pre-1 до C1. Також кожен підручник супроводжується Teacher's Guide, тобто ми можемо тут знайти плани готові занять до кожного підручника, до кожних матеріалів. Крім цього, викладач може повністю слідкувати за прогресом учнів, дивитися, наскільки виконано те чи інше завдання, додавати тести, які автоматично будуть перевіряти успішність учнів, також окремі додаткові інтерактивні worksheets і навіть конструктор вправ, тобто ви можете створити власні тести, власні завдання, власні тексти для читання і багато іншого на цій платформі. І крім цього, система навчального менеджменту або LMS – це, власне, та система, яка дозволяє створювати профайли учнів, контролювати їх і загалом організовувати роботу. Але сьогодні я би хотіла більше зупинитися саме на моменті підручників, тому що там, окрім іншого, є багато корисного для ЄВІ. Але про це ми поговоримо трошки згодом. So, let me switch back to English. And we get started. Yes, hello everybody in the comments. You can say hi to each other. You can say hi to me. You can tell me how the weather is today and maybe how you're feeling. And we start with the second topic. So as you can see, today we're going to speak about challenges. The first webinar that we had last month was dedicated more to the structure of UEE, how it is different from NMT, what is special, what types of tasks are there. And I will reference myself to that webinar from time to time. By the way, you can check it as well. Just by following the link, I believe it will be added to the comments. Yeah, here it is right now. So that's the first webinar. If you need more about the structure, the types of tasks, and how to do those tasks, you may check that one. But today, I want to speak not about the tasks. I want to speak about the students. So, okay, you feel sleepy. We had clouds all the day, but now it's sunny. I hope you will have it too soon. So, tell me please, Who is the typical UEE student? Maybe you prepared some people to UEE. Maybe you will do that in the future. So any thoughts on what these students are like? What is special about them? And as you are writing in the chat, I will share the main things. So regarding their age and background, usually they are 20 plus years old because they are already students. They recently graduated with a bachelor's degree or they are still studying in university. And what's very important and I would say cool, they have a clear goal. So they know exactly why they come to your lessons. They know exactly why they need English. They have a specific purpose to enter master's program, to pass these tests successfully, and that makes them quite motivated students. All right, I can see your comments. I believe that's about these students. So they are stressed, really anxious. Well, yeah, that could be. But you know why? Because like this score, the test results, they are really important for them because their future partially depends on it. Right. So about their learning profile, we can also see some good things about these students. So first of all, they still remember school and university study habits. They are used to studying, processing lots of information, memorizing something, structuring something, and so on and so forth. They are still mostly in academic environment and they know what it is like to follow the teacher, to listen to the teacher, to memorize something, to do their homework even. And they are mostly used to exams and they know what tests are because that's what they did in their university for many years. So studying is not new for them. That's also good. But here's one thing that differs them a lot from school students, and let's check it out. Lifestyle and priorities. As we know, these people might be very busy. They might be truly overbooked because not only studying, but also work can be there in their daily life. And due to that, they might prioritize work tasks, some university tasks, or other assignments, even family, over studying, over preparation. And that's a big minus because you have to deal with the outcomes. You ask them to do the homework, they don't do it because what? They were busy, unfortunately. And yes, you can see they may skip not only homework but even classes due to lack of time, due to being busy, due to lack of energy. Many reasons there. So let's brainstorm together what can be challenging in teaching such students. I've already mentioned a few things. You already mentioned that they could be stressed and anxious, but that's not all. So if you have any ideas what challenges can be there in preparing such students, you're welcome to write that. And meanwhile, I will slowly start preparing and presenting that. So main challenges for the students are these. First of all, there might be mismatch between their skills and the exam requirements. What I mean here is this. For example, let's imagine a student who lived abroad for some time, who had extended spoken practice, who can communicate on daily topics, even without any delay, so basically fluently. Are they always successful in completing the test, though? Not really. Why does it happen? Probably because their fluency doesn't help them with the tests, because they know how to say something, but they do not think of the rules that stay behind those sayings. For example, they can easily say, I'd rather, but they cannot recall whether this D in I'd rather stands for had or would or maybe something else. And that's a big problem because their speech is strong, but their grammar knowledge could be weak at that point. Also, We can notice that some students were focusing on, for example, oral communication, their listening and their speaking skills are strong, but is it something checked at the test? Unfortunately, no. Yeah, so here we mostly focus on reading skills, use of English skills, which is knowing vocabulary and grammar, and that's it. So some skills that might be strong, even having a B2 student, might not help. And also, we can notice some students who have really advanced knowledge in some particular topics. For example, they study IT or economics or other, for example, law in their university, even in English. But at the same time, you know that the test checks some basic topics. Again, the whole list was mentioned in the previous webinar, and they are something like hobbies, traveling, sports, but they may not be acquainted with B2 vocabulary on the topic sports. And that's again the issue, because you meet a strong student who doesn't know some basic things in the topics that they were not relevant to them. All right. So the second problem here, sometimes the students that come to you and need to pass UAE have very low language proficiency. So we know that English test in NMT is not mandatory, so they may choose it or they may not. And then if university program was really poor, we may meet students of A1, A2 level who need to pass this UAE. And what shall we do then? It's also a huge challenge. So as we can see, they might have limited knowledge in grammar and vocabulary. Their slow reading basically prevents them from completing anything on time, and their motivation would be much weaker because they feel that they fall behind everything. Yes, so I can just see such comments. You're exactly saying about that. So lower level of English, making mistakes, especially fossilized mistakes, because if they are using language in daily life, but using it incorrectly, making them change that skill, making them focus on grammar might be even impossible, right? Okay, so the third challenge I highlighted here, time management and procrastination. We've already mentioned in the profile that they are very busy people. So I had some cases when the person came to me 2 weeks before they had exams and like, hey, you're an English teacher. Can you please prepare me for the exam in 2 weeks? Well, I believe that's impossible. No matter how much I try, no matter how good teacher I am, that's really impossible, right? I believe that you might have had similar situations. If yes, you can react somehow right now. So yeah, many start preparing in a very short time before the exam. Also, they do not really plan time for that. So they might skip classes. They might say something like, sorry, I can't, I am busy. Sorry, I can't do that homework, I am busy, and stuff like that. And that happens often, unfortunately. So, number 4, anxiety, something you mentioned, and confidence issues. So, people live in stress in general, and if something else layers up, it just adds to their stress. And of course, you may ignore that, but being a good teacher, being a good tutor, I believe, includes working with your student on different aspects and even teaching them some basic rules of stress management might be needed. We will comment on all the solutions later on. Now we're just focusing on the troubles. So if you think these are all challenges, unfortunately not. There are more. So, number 5, difficulty applying knowledge to exam format. What it means is that students may know the rules, but under pressure, all their thoughts are just lost. I know it happens to your students, it happened to mine, so that's also something we need to work with. Also, students might miss some vocabulary clues in reading or use of English, so they I know it all, but I'm worried I'm not focused and I skip some really important information. And sometimes they might know what present perfect is. They might know what differences between present perfect and past simple are. But when it comes to identifying those differences in the sentences, they're like, and that's it. So that's something else we should address. Number 6, lack of exam awareness or exposure. So what that means? Some of the people have never taken a formal English exam. That's important. Of course, they had an MT, but maybe English was not the part of that. And maybe we should explain from basis, like how to do it, what to do, what to focus, how to do certain tasks. Again, we discussed more different skills and strategies, how to practice tests based on those skills at the previous meeting, so you can just check it, but for now, let's keep it in mind. Also, effective strategies, they may not know them at all. Our task is to show how to deal with different types of activities. And they might struggle with timing, general decision making, and so on and so forth. And I would like to add that there might be some external factors, so something that we cannot even predict sometimes, like limited study time due to their personal issues. General life stress, we know that we live not in a peaceful country right now, unfortunately, so something may happen every day and we still need to act, to live, to be efficient even in those times, but that might affect your students' performances. And shifting requirements. You know for sure that sometimes the updates, some changes in the requirements regarding those tests might be released like a month before the exam or something like that. And tracking those changes might be, I would say, stressful even, not only for students, but for teachers as well. So this need to track updates, this need to stay tuned about like what's going in UAE. Are there the same tasks? Are there the same scores? Is there something different this year? Is there all the same? So all of that needs to be checked. So these were the main challenges for students. Now, how it affects us as teachers? What should we keep in mind? What can stress us out? Let's have a look. First of all, it's adapting to these students' busy schedules. So, as we discussed before, unfortunately, this studying is not their priority. So they may cancel, they may reschedule, they may just forget about your meeting. Sometimes they don't attend your lessons regularly. And due to that, we need to be really flexible when we want to get some result. Of course, it should go both ways. So we do not guarantee 200 points if they don't show up at the lessons. But our task is to motivate, is to make them come to the lessons, is to make them be prepared no matter what, because we are teachers, right? Also, balancing exam preparation with some communication needs. You know that students mostly are talkative people, so they would like to speak with you. They might say something like, "Oh, my listening is also not perfect. Can we please include something like that in our studying?" And here you really need to find that balance in between focusing only on the tasks that are needed for passing UE successfully and in between general English that might be needed to your students, especially oral English, the one that they need for communication. So yeah, that balance might be hard to find. Also, the challenge might be this, finding reliable, updated materials. So we know that there are some specific websites where the typical tasks are presented. But here's the challenge. You know that those mock tests or tests of previous years, they are typically just the tests. If you decide to focus today on certain vocabulary or on certain grammar, you basically need to, pluck the certain activities from the general test to say, like, you see, here's the task on present perfect. You see, here we use the vocabulary on traveling. So, and finding some reliable resources that group the topics that group the tasks by the topics might be challenging, that's for sure. And another challenge might be this. So we need to make them prepare consistently, and that might be a challenge. So they are easily distracted. They won't do their homeworks. They will forget about them. They won't practice additionally, no matter how much you want it from them. And again, that's a problem. So here we might see that teacher struggle built in accountability and follow-up systems. Basically, when I say accountability, it's about keeping students responsible for their learning. So they're accountable, right? Like they know why they do it and they track their own progress because they are already grown-ups and can control that. And follow-up systems, it's about how they basically review what they already learned by doing homeworks, by some recycling during the lessons, by some revision of the topics, for example, with flashcards or just referring to the vocabulary in another way. So yeah, all of that is something we need to think of. And there are more challenges. So let's have a look. Again, shifting exam requirements. As I mentioned before, that might be a problem because something might be changed every year and you need to keep the track of it. Like how the scoring happens, were there any changes in topics, and so on and so forth. Also, it's about managing students with different backgrounds. So we mentioned that some of them might be strong B2s, but with lack of structured grammar knowledge. Some of them might be low-level students which require additional support. And even more challenging it becomes when you work in groups and you have all of those students in one group. So then you need to be really creative and you really need to plan in layers, maybe in levels, being ready to adjust the tasks for weaker students, for fast finishers, for the students who need to focus more on grammar, for the students who need to focus more on vocabulary, etc., etc. And limited time to teach those skills. So we know for sure that students typically come late because truly, like to prepare for the exam well, we need to spend at least a few months and definitely more than 2, like 3, 4 at least, right? But they come too late and it's really hard to cover all the topics deeply during that time. So for that, we also need to have some backup strategies on how to help them briefly, efficiently, and how to teach them at least something in the time we have. So these were the main challenges that I could recall. And if you have any more, ideas, you are welcome to write in the comments. So if your challenge wasn't mentioned here, please leave it and we will discuss it as well after the solutions I suggest to the ones that we already discussed. So here you can see the same challenges put in a row, and now we're gonna focus on some possible solutions for each of them. So number 1, as you remember, was skill exam mismatch. That's when some strong students might be weak in certain topics that are checked at the test. And here are some possible solutions for that. So first of all, you need to focus on some contrasts. So in other words, you need to raise their contrastive awareness. You need to show them like, look, here's what you said, and here's the formal equivalent, for example. Or, for example, here's the contracted version that you typically use, but here's how it looks like in the full sentence, in formal language. So contrast might be helpful. That helps them build some links in between what they already know and what they should know. Also, you need to train their functional reading skills. They might be very good at reading, but that doesn't mean they are good at doing tests that check their reading skills. They are totally different sometimes. So you need to teach them how to scan correctly, how to match correctly, how to exclude the odd options, how to even highlight keywords in the text. All of that might help them stay focused. Because yeah, like strong readers, they can get the main information, but they may not read, like in between the lines or read carefully. And that's why focusing on those strategies, explaining how to do each task, explaining what exactly skill each task checks, whether it's gist reading, specific information reading, and so on and so forth, might be important. So yeah, make sure they know how to do that reading task. Also, it is important to build their lexical syllabus. So they may know lots of vocabulary, but it may be of the topic that are presented in the test. So that's why focus on everything that might be there. You remember the list of topics from webinar 1, again, you can check it, but also keep in mind collocations, certain idioms, phrasal verbs, lots of phrasal verbs, make sure they know that stuff. So focus on what they don't know and will definitely be checked in the text. Also, it is important to let those students comment on their choices, to think on what they are choosing and why. So you can ask them questions like, which skills helped you today? Or for example, which skills are checked in this task? And when they are aware of what it was about, how they were doing it, it would be easier for them to complete it in the test consciously, not just intuitively, but consciously. And one more thing you can do here is design some exam style tasks. So we may use all the tests, but that will be not enough. So here, try to find similar reading tasks. Try to prepare specific tests which are similar to the ones that will be at the exam, and that will help you keep students focused. So number 2 was, on the contrary, about low-level students that can't cope with the exam level yet. So it's really difficult for them. Like everything about the test is challenging for them, starting with reading the instructions. And that's what you basically need to do first. Focus on each type of the tasks. Explain what is required in each of them, so they at least don't spend time during the real exam on reading the instructions. So they need to know exactly how to do each and every task. That's super important. Also, in the beginning, when you just start teaching them, you may use scaffolded versions of real tasks. Maybe you can substitute some complex vocabulary things into easier ones. You can use shorter texts. You can use, for example, even L1, meaning Ukrainian language, their native language, when needed in order to help them. So, for example, if some words block their general understanding of the task, but do not influence the answer, you might help with those words to help them see the whole picture, to help them focus on what is the most important. So that would be useful. Also, you need to focus on survival strategies. That's something that doesn't guarantee perfect result, but something that helps them survive during the test. Meaning complete it at least somehow, meaning pass it, not fail it, even with not perfect score. And we're going to speak about survival strategies later on because that's a very interesting topic to discuss. Also, with such students, you may build micro routines. So, for example, every lesson, you can focus on some vocabulary drill, dedicating 5 to 10 minutes to that. Also, you can focus on sentence building, you can focus on certain grammar drilling and stuff like that. So make sure they feel the language, make sure they use the language, make sure they listen firstly and then repeat the language, because only then they will start understanding how English sounds like. And then they will get this maybe inbuilt feeling like that sounds right, or that sounds right, or that sounds wrong. So help them be exposed to the language so they build somehow this intuition and start feeling like what is right, what is wrong, maybe even not being able to explain that. Also, you can choose the most often used grammar and drill it using even chunks. For example, the construction used to. You can explain it for a while, or you can make it simpler. For example, I used to wear skirts when I was a schoolgirl. What did you used to do? And then you start just like repeating different random things you used to do. For example, when you were 5, or when you were 10, or when you were, I don't know, at university, and so on and so forth. So just keep repeating again and again something with used to until they are okay with this construction. And every time you have a lesson, every time you have this grammar topic, make sure they don't only understand why to use it, how to use it, but make sure they're using it during the lesson. The more times they will repeat it, the easier for them will be to recall it somehow during the test. And confidence building tasks. So it means you may simplify something, you may prepare some easier tasks or even fun tasks like the games, but make sure those tasks leave them motivated. And that would be cool. Okay, let's keep moving. So the next challenge that we're gonna look at is time management. So, as you know, students might not prepare regularly or might not prepare at all, and that's an issue. So here, first of all, at the very first lesson or even before that, you need to set the goals. So here I mentioned weekly goals, but if your student came to you like a month before the exam, set the goals for this month. For example, all right, we're gonna have 8 meetings with you. And then like tell what you're gonna do each and every meeting with your student, letting them understand how important it is to prepare, like how big is the amount of information they will need to learn. And maybe that will, I don't know, awaken some inner understanding of the importance of such things. Because many students believe that like that's not a big deal, I can miss something and like so what? But you plan and you know for sure that, for example, if they don't learn this topic, they cannot learn the next one because this grammar is connected somehow. And your task is to let students understand that as well. So yeah, sit with them, show them those goals, help them understand those goals, help them accept those goals. And after that, you may break it into some smaller parts, like weekly goals. So this week we are learning this and this vocabulary, and we are practicing, for example, reading skills or use of English skills. So I expect you to, or for example, what do you expect to have in the end of the week? You may even ask your students, because the more they are involved in this planning, goal setting, the more interested they are in their own results. Also, here you can use habit stacking. What it means, they can study not only with you, explain them where, show them how to practice English without you. That can be, for example, learning the flashcards during the break, or even listening to those flashcards while they're in transport. Whatever they do, it will be helpful. So let them revise, let them review something that you presented to them before on their own. And again, it's not just your task to say, just learn it somewhere. Give them specific ideas, like where they can learn it, how they can learn it. Maybe even discuss, like, do you have any breaks at work? What do you typically do when you're commuting, for example, back home from work? And so on and so forth. So show them, like, look, here's the possibility, here's the opportunity even to learn. And I believe that will help them focus more. Also, you can even include some checklists. So as you set the goals, as you present the plan, you can later check what was done. For example, all right, we've planned to cover this and this and this, but due to this situation when you had to skip previous lesson, we are now missing that. And discuss how you're gonna cover it. Maybe suggest students learn some words individually. Maybe add additional lesson next week. Maybe you can just briefly give them some instructions and tasks and they can cover it somehow on their own. Or maybe you need to put two topics into one lesson somehow. So that's up to you, but let your students know what's happening. So it's not just you like, oh my God, we are falling behind. Let your students be the part of it. Let your students understand that they are falling behind and that they need to catch up. Also, it can be some kind of challenge. Like here on the screen, you can see the 30 days of exam preparation challenge. And you can say that, for example, all right, every day you learn, I don't know, you choose 10, 20 new words, for example. That's up to you. Or every day you do at least one task to practice certain grammar. Maybe you add here not something they need to learn with you in a controlled way, but something for the revision. For example, they are okay with vocabulary in generally, and you decided not to focus on that because grammar is their weak side. But let them revise vocabulary on their own individually and maybe have 5-minute review or feedback every lesson you meet. That would be rather useful. And also, if you work in groups or if you teach students in pairs, or even if you have simply 2 students that you are preparing for these exams, you can somehow put them together and even let them control their success. So it's not you saying, I have another student who is 2 topics ahead of you. That sounds awful. But create a chat where they discuss something, where they share something, and where they can notice that they are falling behind. Or, for example, they can even help their peers. They can send some useful links, and so on and so forth. So let them communicate. Again, if you have more than one student, think of that. It could be really interesting, and that could really motivate your students. And we move to problem number 4, anxiety, the one you mentioned. So, yes, here, what solutions we can suggest? First of all, test simulations, or in simple words, mock tests. So the more mock tests they take, the more of them they complete, the more confident they become during the real exam. And that's a simple thing. So they just need to do it again and again. And also focus on the feedback. Make sure you track timing, because letting them do it like whatever time they need is not correct. So stick to some timing, let them know like they're lagging of time, they need to do it faster. It's better if they practice it with you when it's not something that they can fail, because if they first face those strict time frames during the real test, it would be really challenging. Also, it's not your responsibility, but if you are truly interested in your students' result, you can teach them some calm down techniques, because I'm pretty sure if you ever prepared the students and then check them, so how did it go? How was your result? A typical answer is, Well, I knew most of it, but I got nervous and something went wrong. At least 50% of students have something like that. They got nervous, and that's why they didn't get, I don't know, a few more points. So teach them how to calm down. It can be some breathing technique. It can be just like focus, do not worry. If you don't know, skip it, then go further, whatever instructions you have, but explain it to them. Find some resources how to manage stress, how to manage anxiety, and try those tips with your students. They would be really grateful when they use it in the test and stay focused. Also, motivation plays a great role, so celebrate their small wins. When you notice some improvements, let them know about that. Don't push your students, don't shame your students. If you notice they are getting better, tell them about that. It really makes them feel more confident. And that's very important because confidence is a key, especially during the exam. And also, you can make your teaching fun, including some fun activities. It can be certain types of games, flashcards. Even with one student, you can play Quizlet. Even with one student, you can play Kahoot. Just be their partner or launch this view mode, but let them relax, at least at some point. You know, they are extremely busy people. You know, they are stressed because they have a lot of things. So that game, that is still a good point to give them feedback, is a good point to explain some rules one more time. It helps them unwind. So you can use it. And again, if you have a chance to work not with one student, but with more, peer comparison, but only in a positive context, can be a great benefit. So they can together reflect on their progress, on their successes, on their weak points. It's really important for students to know that I'm not the only one who struggles. I'm not the only one who makes mistakes, or wow, we both succeeded in this. So that would be really nice for those people. So when we speak about applying knowledge to the exam format, here it's all about how to actually do the test. So remember, they might know grammar rules, but they may be not able to use them under the pressure, and test is a pressure. So for that, focus on soft skills like general logic training. Make them explain their choice. Why is it wrong? Why do you think so? Why did you choose this option? And what's the difference between these two? Like maybe A is also possible. No? Explain why it is impossible. So make a dialogue, let them analyze, let them prove each and every choice they make, and only then they would know for sure how to do those tasks and how to exclude the options. Also, you can break down the tasks into micro skills. So, as we discussed earlier, the previous webinar, each tasks, even reading, they check different reading sub-skills. So whether it is to understand the whole text, whether it is to understand the main idea, whether it is to understand specific detail. So help them realize what they are doing, why they are doing that, teach them those sub-skills, explain how they work, explain what test wants from them. I'm pretty sure you know what each task checks, right? So let your students know as well. Also, here you can use drills, which is useful from any perspective. Constant repetition of something, whether it is some vocabulary or grammar. Also, when you give the feedback, after that you might ask your students to rewrite, repair, re-answer certain test, and that helps them kind of double analyze what they did and focus on the correct option after they made a mistake. So this like redoing, maybe even after the lesson. So you discussed all the weak points, all the incorrect choices, and now please at home, look through this test one more time and choose the correct option in each and every case. And that will help them memorize better, because like double thinking won't take a lot of time because they just solved that test, but it will help them to conclude it, to maybe put it in their long-term memory, and they will be more confident during the test. And again, it's very important to do this so-called trap spotting thing. So you know that tests often created to confuse the students, right? So there might be words like false friends, something that can be translated into Ukrainian incorrectly, but sounds exactly like something I would use in Ukrainian. So those things that are confusing. Also, sometimes, especially when we speak about use of English vocabulary part, there might be overly general words or grammar mismatches. So let them notice those things. Teach students how to notice, explain it, and tell students that mostly if something is too obvious, that's not the right choice. You know it, right? So teach that to your students. Also, when we speak about lack of exam awareness, I wouldn't say that's a typical issue because most of the students are well acquainted with the tests. But still, if your student didn't complete NOT, this UAE might be a challenge for them. So in that case, first of all, show them how the test looks like. Run the diagnostic mock test. Let them complete it. Let them see what it looks like. Also, you can even create some infographics or take one from the official website. I mean, what parts there are, what types of tasks, how many tasks in each category, what's the scoring, what's the timing. So let your students be aware of all of that. It's really important. Also, you may use this focus task type per week. So for example, this week we are practicing reading for gist, like this reading matching task. Or this week we are practicing use of English vocabulary part, and keep doing and doing the same types of tasks until your students notice the pattern. Again, if you present it mixed, like bits of use of English, bits of reading every lesson, that would probably confuse your students. But if you do the same thing again and again, they will start noticing the patterns. And that's something that will help them during the test. And also, you can assign at-home mini mocks. Mini mock, it's like you just take the part of the test. For example, today we practiced use of English grammar part. So at home, do just this part of the test, but of another test to kind of submit everything, to recall it one more time, and like to put it in your long-term memory. That would be really useful. And as you remember, external factors were put together as point number 7. So here, what we can do. For example, when you have limited time, you can at least create this minimum viable study path, like the most essential topics that need to be covered during the test. Also, you can be a study coach, not just a teacher. So you can help your students like showing how to prepare, where to prepare, what to do, and provide some feedback from time to time if they don't have enough time to meet with you regularly. Again, you might use different flexible tools. So you may use certain platforms, you may use Google Docs, you may use some reminders, calendars, even short video lessons, or I don't know, some worksheets to keep everything organized for the students and to let them use it when they can. So now, as we discussed all the challenges, let's focus on survival strategies briefly. So these survival strategies are for whether low-level students that need to cover lots of information in short time, or just students with limited preparation time. Again, those students don't have enough time to review everything in detail. And first thing you need to do is to set the correct mood for that. So what you need to tell to your students is they don't need and they won't get everything right. So they just need to get enough right. Like for those students, let's be honest, it's almost impossible to score something like 200 points. But try to identify what's their minimum expectations, what they need to get in the test so they are satisfied, and try to lead them at least to that point. Again, you can teach them to skip some difficult tasks. So if they feel they are stuck, if they feel they don't get it at all, just skip it and focus on something they know. And be honest with your students. Do not promise you will give them 200 points if that's not possible. Set realistic expectations and let your students know that, like, unfortunately, with your level, or unfortunately, with the time we have, that's probably the maximum we want to hope for. And that would be fair. And I believe that's the right strategy, because that would actually be that you kept your word. Otherwise, I believe that might influence your general image even as a teacher. And here are some really working strategies. So first of all, teach your students the skeleton of the test. So they need to know exactly how many tasks there are, which ones are the easiest, which ones they should focus on first, which ones they may not touch until the end because they are rather complicated, and how many questions they need to complete right to get the passing score. That's the key. After that, you may teach your students some time management tricks. Again, if stuck, move on. Do not focus. Again, answer all the questions. Like, focus on everything you know. Then you can just randomly tick something, and that would work better. You have a chance to get at least 1-2 extra points for randomly guessing. Do not leave blank answers. Like, answer each and every question. Also, teach them how to use elimination technique. Firstly, exclude something that is obviously odd. If they are unsure, let them choose something most neutral or something that seems grammatically correct. And let them read each option aloud. Let them trust the intuition. If something sounds right, probably that's the right choice. Again, it's not the strategy for preparing students for the maximum score. It's the survival strategy for the students who really are in their straits. Then, focus on easy wins. For that, first of all, you need to know your students' strengths. Maybe they are good at reading, maybe they know vocabulary better. So, let them focus on those tasks first. Explain where those tasks start and let them do those tasks as the priority. Also, teach your students to focus on some anchors, something they will recognize no matter how difficult the text is. That might be something like proper names, numbers, repeated words, and let them notice how everything is arranged around those words. In use of English part, again, you know for sure that we always have some tenses, that we always have some articles, for example. So focus on those most common, most typical topics first. And also teach them basic collocations, basic phrasals that are typically used in the test. Also, you can use templates, repetition. So here it's important to let your students understand, like, how to do it typically. And make some short study sets, for example, in Quizlet, so that your students can easily revise them later on. Again, you may focus only on the key things like core grammar, basic vocabulary, and mini tests to practice all of that. And be actually stoic, focused on homework. So agree that no matter what, no matter how busy they are, they have some non-negotiable essentials, like that basic minimum they need to do no matter what. And offer bonus challenges in case they have more time. Just in case, maybe they'll do it. It would be useful. So, and when we speak about the resources, something that might help them in preparation, here are probably the main things. You know it for sure. Tests of previous years. All of them are put there, right? But also, you may use this website, testportal.gov.ua, where you can introduce PDF versions of the tests to your students. It's important for them to see how the test looks like in a printed way, because in case they pass it that way, that's also useful. But remember that there are not all the tests presented in PDF version, so ZNO Osvita contains more tests. But as I mentioned before, these both sites have one issue. They do not have the test tasks grouped on the topics. And for that, you might find TalkEn.Cloud resources pretty useful, because here materials are divided on topics. They have up-to-date information on the requirements and topics that will definitely be there in the real exam, and what's more important, they can be used by the teacher and the student, or just by the student, so you can even assign certain things to your student to practice on their own, and that's super useful, especially in terms they have not enough time. And also I can recommend Test English. You definitely know that portal, so it can be like additional practice of vocabulary or grammar or even reading, based on the topics you need your students to cover better. I'd recommend you to stick to B1 plus or B2 level, but here you need to be really selective. Do not overwhelm your students with extra topics which are not included in the test, and choose what is relevant for the exam only. Here you can find the QR code for TalkEn.Cloud resources, so you may scan it right now, or I believe you can get the link in the comments later. And yeah, that would be really useful for you, like to have those materials for you as a teacher and to share with your students. And additionally, you may use popular resources like Quizlet, creating vocabulary study sets there, or Kahoot or quizzes to practice grammar in a fun way, and to reduce your students' stress. And speaking of stress, let's look briefly at what I have here. So, first of all, you need to reduce the stress in the classroom. For that, use gamified drills. Even Kahoot and quizzes that I mentioned before might be fun and useful there. And time challenges. So until it's in the classroom and you set the timer, it's fun. So when they're used to that in a fun way, they will stress less during the exam. Also, let your students track their progress visually. Those can be even some colored charts they fill in. Why not? Let it be fun. Even adults can experience that, and celebrate small wins to boost their confidence. It's important, so support them, show them that they are good at something. They will really value it, and before the exam, so it might be even after you finish your studying or somewhere at the final lessons, teach your students how to reduce stress. For example, breathing techniques, as we mentioned before, or some self-talk scripts, so anything that can calm them down. Also, keep practicing under time constraints to make them used to it, and show them how to scheme for points and move on when stuck. So they look through, they notice they don't get something, just skip it, move on, return when you have time. If you have time, that would be all right. And for you, as a teacher, to reduce your own stress in preparation, first of all, you can save time using some auto-corrected homework tools. Again, like the ones you can meet on TalkEn.Cloud platform. So if it checks for you, of course, it's better. Also, use class time for strategies and feedback. So make sure you teach them how to do it. Make sure you give them feedback on what they do wrong or right, and that would be helpful. And also, you can keep some resource bank for quick access materials. You can create your own, or you can find one, especially among the resources I shared before. And I believe that all will help you stay calm and for your students to ace that test. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for being here. I hope it was useful. Again, if you were absent during the first webinar, I highly recommend to check it to know how exactly to address different types of tasks. And I wish you good luck in preparing your students, and to your students, good luck in preparing to that exam. So thank you for your attention. That's all from me, and goodbye.